Hello, my little code goblins. It's been, for those of you that have been following this series, sorry for the long gap between this part and the last part. I hit a bit of a coder's block, burnout, laziness. I really got obsessed with my algorithm and data series. My house burned down. Flood happened. Tornado almost killed me. No, all that stuff's fake. I'm just saying, I mean it. I got burned out and lazy on this topic, but I figured I still want to build out this CRUD application, even though I can look at it now and be like, oh, I can code so many things better. Even like 2 months of like learning and making YouTube videos and answering questions in Discord and the comments and whatnot. Like I tell my students, I'm continually improving just as they are, right? And I'm happy to always give y'all a helping hand up to my level wherever possible. So while there is plenty of things here I would code differently looking back now, I'm gonna try and keep moving this series forward so we can all, like I intended at the start of the series, is have a portfolio-worthy project. At least one of my students has already DM'd me how they styled theirs, and it blew mine out of the water. Go figure. So I kept mine very simple and to the point, because I realized styling something is it's such a like interpretive, subjective beast that we could sit here and argue about pixel values and grids versus columns versus margins and paddings and whatnot. So I gave it a professional sheen, and I'll talk about some of the things I did along the way. So like I said, this is the styling video, where just the other night, I pushed the styling commit, ripped my life into into the GitHub repository that can be found in the description linked below. And y'all can see what I did and where I did it, because I want to get through this video explaining what I did and show y'all a couple of things so I don't just comment on code, but actually write a few things to show y'all what you can do as well. Then after that, we're going to get back to the fun part of this project, which is actually adding new features, something I've been wanting to do for a while, but I had to get past this bump in the road, and I think I'm finally mentally and code-wise prepared to do so. So let's take a look at how she looks. For those of you that have found this content recently and have just been binging all the videos for this free CRUD app course, then this video just came to you directly, and my other folks had to wait about a month and a half, I think, for this next video series to come out. Again, sorry for that delay. But you know how crappy it looked in previous video, but now we have we have a very corporate official looking site, y'all. Let's go. That's what I'm talking about. Look at that. Beautiful website right there. So we called it DnD Note Master. Gotta change my title right there to match this because currently it doesn't, but we'll get there eventually. The best app to manage your Dungeons and Dragons notes. Basically, I had like a blast looking through like your typical marketing and corporate sites and just like taking some keywords and buzzwords and ideas from them to generate some content here. So DnD Note Master, the best app to manage your Dungeons and Dragons note, made this hero component that when you click on our lovely primary button here, it takes us to start taking notes, which jots a new note down, but it will lead to a login page if you're not logged in, which I believe I already am. And I am fairly zoomed in, I think, so y'all can see this. Yeah, and again, like the zooming in, as we learned the hard way in this video series, will trigger my medium and large breakpoints to start styling things differently. So we always got to have a little introduction here. Welcome to DnD Note Master. DnD Note Master is your digital companion for your D&D adventures. Easily create, manage, and organize your campaign notes. Track your quests, NPCs, and party members all in one place. Dive deeper in your campaign with DnD Note Master. Again, like putting in some like copy like this just will give your portfolio projects that extra sheen of professionalism and care from a side project that has a homepage that says, yo, what up, this is my shit, right? So this stuff like this is what will make it pop to your recruiters and interviewers more than just a site you kind of make for yourself. So I always try and add this goofy little pseudo-professionalism stuff to my projects, because it kind of bumps them up that extra tier of like, all right, I see what you did there. And speaking of that, how do we BS our way through key features, right? Like, our key features in this app are CRUD. We can create, read, update, and destroy notes. That's not exactly very feature heavy or feature rich, so this will be fun to see how we BS our way through this one. The key features of D&D Note Taker: read notes, add notes, edit notes, delete notes, and these beautiful looking card components here. I don't know what else to tell you. That's it. That's exactly what this app does, and we made it look cool with some box shadow and some borders. Some fake testimonials, always fun to generate, whether through your friends or family or through your brain. Testimonials. Tiamat, the Queen of Dragons, says, DnD Node Master helps me keep my followers and lore organized. Highly recommended. And Bahamut, the Platinum Dragon. I'm not going to do a voice for Bahamut. It's just me. As a deity of D&D, I've seen many... I'm going to have to do a voice. I've seen many tools, but D&D Note Master stands out with its convenience and ease of use. Look at those testimonials, right? Who wouldn't want to use D&D Note Master without testimonials like that from literally two dragons? One super good and one super evil. Yeah, so again, like fun stuff like this is what makes your projects... I don't know. Like I said, they feel more real, right? It gives them that tangibility to it. And again, it gives you a chance to be creative and have some fun. Throw in some Easter eggs, right? And that way people looking at your site will not just be trying to look at it through an analytical scope of like, all right, what is this project, this person applying for this job has built? Oh, this is actually kind of funny and kind of cool. So, you know, stuff like this. In terms of what I actually did here, let's take a look. I mean, I wrote down like some notes of what I did as I went along the way to make sure that I can actually break it down for y'all here. So let's go take a look at that home view because she is way different than before, right? Like I had mentioned, that hero button right down yonder, right? It's a button component that I have made and imported to this project into this view. It has a color prop and a size prop that I've coded with the ability to add additional class names. I gave it an on-click of handle click with the text of start taking notes. What does handle click do? We had this authenticated hook brought in here in the previous video where I just had like an H1, a header saying whether you're logged in or not for a quick visual key on that. But now I made it so if you are authenticated and you click it, it navigates you to notes new, which would be adding a new note because you're logged in. You're ready to take notes. If you're not logged in, it takes you to the register page. Or you can have a button there that takes you to the login page to make sure that they can log in so they can start adding notes, because that is one of our features we worked on, adding authorization, authentication concepts into our application. So from there, I created a hero component. A hero would be this big attention, eye-grabbing getting thing right here. Daisy UI has one. I happen to translate it into a component kind of lazily, right? Because again, how I do these components is not some be-all, end-all approach. It is some personal choices I made, some out of necessity, some out of laziness. Let's go take a look at it real quick. Components, this is one of the new one, the hero. So just like before, React from React, Twitter merge from Twitter merge. Tailwind merge, so we can merge additional class names without losing them in that hierarchy that we talked about when we first showed this library. The interface for the hero component extends React HTML attributes of an HTML div element. Ultimately, it returns a div, and I want to make sure any additional attributes I pass this are recognized and auto-completed as such. It'll have two additional required prompts, a title and subtitle for our hero component, title, subtitle, and any additional children, which happen to be my button. I had the button in here originally, but then I realized that I may not always have a button inside of a hero, and that button might have some custom routing logic, so I dictated that it should be out of the component and in the view that where the button's being created. So rather than have the button logic be in here, I'd rather create it out here and then simply have it be wrapped as a child of the hero component. So just like in other ones, I take any additional, I destructure the props I care about, title and subtitle, so I can render them in this H1 and this paragraph of just padding around it. Text size 4XL, font bold, get it really attention and eye grabbing, give it a max width to make sure it doesn't overstretch itself on larger size screens. That's what max width medium means right there. Text center, hero content, that's a Daisy UI class name. Class name, children, that's children will be the button or anything else text-wise I might want to wrap. Any additional props would probably be HTML attributes and things like that. And the base class is called hero from Daisy UI and Tailwind, and then Tailwind merge, I'm going to say twmerge. Twmerge we'll take any additional class names to make sure they are not overridden and they correctly merge with our base root class of hero. So yeah, that's what this component does. It doesn't, as you can see, not a lot of fancy looking JSX or class names, but it makes a big attention getting thing right there. So I can pass in like if I wanted to, I can pass in like new background colors and things like that to have it really start popping. And what did I do here? Yeah, as you can see, I passed in a bunch of padding and a background base of gray 200, that base 200 in my fantasy theme that I have here with Daisy UI. And that padding just gives it so much additional extra visual space to be like, look at me. From there, that is the hero component. I've now, we had our container from previous videos we made where I started showing y'all how I began approaching coding these reusable components and extending my interfaces with the HTML attributes. Same thing, container, padding, margin auto, px0 on medium and higher. I've been using the containers basically as like, again, like kind of like each section of my site is containered, and I've been reusing that over and over again for that. So like container for the hero, container for the welcome text, container for the features, container for the testimonials. It's been like my logical organizing tool for this project. And again, this is the home page. I want lots of space between everything, so I've been adding a lot of padding to each container so they're not stacked right one next to each other. From there, just some flavor text and a paragraph and an H2, not much to it. Down here, we finally get into some cool stuff. I've been using this one fairly regularly across all of my views. So I can probably extract it into like some kind of section title component, but just lazy for right now. But we can consider doing that here, like make like a page title component that utilizes this right here to save us having to remember the class names or copying, pasting them over and over again, right? For this and this, like they could probably be a component with some kind of title or children prop we utilize. But more importantly, I generate these cards down here, and I reuse the cards for both the testimonials and the key features with some cool things around them. So let's go take a look at the card component themselves. We can see I was too lazy to make a card body and card title components. Rather, I just made the card component itself for practice, and then would simply wrap any children that I would have for my Daisy UI class names right here. Let's go take a look at that card component that I have written here. And again, at any point in this video, you can find the GitHub link in the description down below. Find the commit that you saw. I had called it, oh goodness, styling commit, rip my life. You can find this commit in my GitHub repository's commit history. Click on it and then begin copying any code down, whether through Control-C, Control-V, right-click copy, or just using two monitors and writing it out yourself, whatever you want to do. So you can always pause the video, look up the repository, find that commit, and try and catch up if you're trying to follow along exactly, or if you've already veered off in your own styling, then you're sitting back and learning some stuff here. Okay, same thing. It's a div element, and I decided it'll have some cards may have a border, some may not. I decided that all my cards should have the option to be bordered or not bordered, but I default them, as you can see, to a bordered value of true. So bordered equals true if one's not provided, so I have to toggle it off if I don't want to border. Any additional class names, any additional props, typically HTML attributes. The base class is card, merge any additional class names, do the optional class X of card bordered. So if bordered is true, it adds the additional class name of card bordered. From there, add an ARIA label of card for accessibility. Any additional props will be spread out on the div itself. There's the class name, and I would have something very, very similar to this for card body, card title, and card text, which is why I didn't want to make three separate components that I have to add together here, right? So I decided to keep it brief with the card here for practice and to make sure y'all can see and get used to how to write these, because again, this is a course, so I'm trying to teach y'all some stuff along the way. So build yourself a card component. But from there, you can see I just got lazy with the card body and card title being real. And again, just added some flavor text for all of these cards. Same thing down here for the testimonials. If we scroll on down, new container for like organization. There you can see there's that H2 being repeated. So that kind of is an aha moment as a React developer to go, hold on a minute. I could totally reuse that across my application as its own like page title component or something like that. So again, ideas as we like look through code I've written. The cards are used the exact same way, and as you can see, I add additional classes of things like shadow to my cards, so they kind of pop off the page a little bit more, make them feel more real, more tangible, like you can pluck them right off. As I say to my students, box shadow is the eyeliner of the internet, so use it. And yeah, that's really like all the magic sauce on this page that I did here, except for one little tidbit I did with the cards themselves. I normally take a flex and margin padding approach here and guttering and whatnot, but I decided to experiment some with grids and grid columns, right? So taking a look at how I handled this right here, you can see for by 2. If I scroll down, it goes vertical and all nice looking right there. And like the more cards I had, the more I can handle, the more I could show you. But let's see what I mean. So the div wrapping the cards here, right? Same one for down here with similar values. Grid. This directive applies the CSS grid layout to the container, which happens to be the div, not my container component. So it applies the grid CSS directive to this div. It allows for complex and responsive designs with more control than the traditional layout methods. I don't use it all that often, so I challenge myself to try and do it here and try to understand it well enough to be able to explain it to you. Grid calls 1, the next class name we're looking at in this class list. This sets the number of grid columns to 1 on smaller screens, meaning the grid items will be stacked vertically. So this is your vertical stacking class name for small screens to make sure that it is a mobile-first design. So this is the first thing I did. How do I make it stack vertically on a small screen? Because again, mobile-first design dictates that we go to mobile first, take a look at it, and make sure it looks good. Then, gap-4. This sets the spacing or gap between the grid cells. The number 4 corresponds to a spacing scale defined by Tailwind CSS. By default, one spacing unit is 0.25 rems, which is 4 pixels. So gap 4 will correspond to a 1 rem or 16 pixel gap between the cards, right? MB8. This applies margin bottom down to the container, right? So it just bumps it down a little bit here. That's it. Nothing to it. And then MD, grid calls 2. I think y'all know what this is. This means that on medium size, all right, so this grid calls 1. This is our mobile first class name. Medium and higher means I'm allowing a 2x2 column. And then as you can probably infer, large allows up to 4 in a row. And that's it. That's how you can utilize these particular class names to generate a cool grid for sets of cards and things like that, and not feeling like you're having to be overly reliant on the Bootstrap container row column system like I was for so many years. CSS Grid's pretty cool. It's taken me, I've been a curmudgeon about learning it, and it was pretty fun to try and figure out the class names that Tailwind has to handle building a mobile responsive grid, and I think I did so quite gracefully. And again, I could theoretically move that into its own component if I wanted to, where I can pass in a number for default and then my breakpoints as well. So that's something you can take into consideration if you want to extract it out into its own component, because theoretically there'll be plenty of other places where I may require some kind of grid component to organize something nice. So yeah, that about wraps it up for the home component, right? What else have we done here? Yeah, so speaking of components, there's actually some cool stuff I did in the components directory. So let's go ahead there specifically. If you take a look here, we talked about button and all this crazy stuff we have here. The button itself, buttons, I think, can have a color or size attribute in HTML, and I didn't want to bump into that. So this is a cool thing to do if you didn't know. Interface button props extends, and there's an omit type, right, that I can pass to TypeScript to say, hey, I want the React HTML attributes of an HTML button, but I want you to omit size union color because I want to use them as my own custom props, not as HTML attributes. So this is a way you can actually tell TypeScript to, hey, type it as such, but omit these particular properties because I want to use them differently or I don't care about them or something like that, right? So, this button, it might be an anchor button. We want to have different sizes. I'll talk about these two here in a minute. But again, I think it was size or color was on buttons and things like that, or maybe it was on inputs. But again, one of these things that I wanted access to was already an HTML attribute. So they were like, hey, you can't pass this value to this attribute. And I was like, yes, I can. And I made it by omitting it. So that's a pretty cool TypeScript nifty trick, the omit type, right? I want all these features except this property. Right, whether the button's a full width button or not, how wide it is, if it's active, loading, responsive, if it has icons. I added the React icons library and added them to a couple buttons across my application, and these props let me know if it's start or end of said icons. Destructure all the lovely properties I've written here and get the rest down here as whatever the rest are, merge that button class name, additional class names, and then write my class X logic for how to style the button given a size and color. As you can see here, my IntelliSense knows what the sizes and colors are. I'll get to that in just a moment. I thought that was super cool to figure that out. Okay. If it's an href, then I want to return an anchor that has that class name and the classes and the href and whatnot. Otherwise, return a button with all the props, the class name, disabled property. If there's a start icon and it's not loading, show that start icon, show the children, which will be the text typically, and then the end icon as well. So yeah, pretty cool little button component right here. Card, y'all saw. Container, we've already seen. Drawer, we coded out together. Hero, I showed y'all. Input. Same thing as the rest here. I think it was input had a size property or color property on it, so I had to omit them from the TypeScript types, which will be an HTML input element right here to make sure we know what other attributes should be automatically added to IntelliSense autocompletes of my input component. We're going to pass in a value, placeholder, type, class name, color, border defaulted to true, size, and whatever else we want to pass in. Merge the base input class from Daisy UI and Tailwind. Additional class names. Have some dynamic logic to determine whether it's bordered, color, and size. We want to customize that, and we simply return an input with all that fun stuff. So as you can see here, we're going to pass in a value directly, and because we have ... rest, our on-change handlers, our name attributes, and things like that will be maintained and spread here correctly. Same thing for the text area, nothing different here. It's pretty much the exact same thing with a few less properties since it's less customizable than the input, but because I also have up here text area HTML attributes that can make sure that I can pass in the row equals to my text area component, because inputs don't have rows like text area, so I want to make sure that I have that TypeScript interface correctly added with the text area element. That way it knows that it can add those. Fairly certain we had the toast working just fine. I had that test toast available on the homepage where we click the button and have it do stuff. I had that, I'm pretty sure I did success and error on the previous video, but you know, basically, I made a template toast and customized it with some colors for success and error because I'll be using it across my application for various purposes and reasons. Side drawer, private, all these we coded already together, I'm fairly certain. So, yeah. Okay. Now for the magics, right? I told y'all I did some cool things with TypeScript. So let's go take a look at that. I have two specifically new files pushed in the, again, I called it, I'm not going to go back and look at it, the Rip My Life styling commit, but constants and types in my components folder does some specific things that are very cool. I wrote in the brand colors that are available across a lot of Daisy UI. Because remember, Daisy UI aims to be kind of like Bootstrap class names on top of Tailwind. So we can write button primary instead of that huge list of class names, right? That you would otherwise need in a vanilla Tailwind project. So we have our typical ones: primary, secondary, accent. We have status colors, info, success, warning, error. We have BG colors, base 100, base 200, base 300, and neutral. Component colors will be a mix of brand colors, status colors, and the ghost color. How do I know all these? Again, if you go look at like Daisy UI documentation, dead air. Here we go. I like how I dead air myself. All right, if we look at Daisy UI, that's where we get primary, secondary, accent, brand colors, info, success, warning, error, status colors, and ghost. Hence why we have that as the component colors. Our component sizes can be large, medium, small, extra small. By looking at their documentation, those are the sizes that you see right here, right? So we define constant values related to the styling and configuration of components. We have an array of brand colors, status colors, background colors, component colors, and component sizes. The arrays are declared using the asConstant assertion to preserve their literal types. So that's what asConst means in this, and this is where I learned about this, which is sad to say. I've been writing TypeScript for so long and just only recently learned I could do this. This gives me a constant of this type, because if without asConst there, yeah, asConst maintains the array structure. Right? If I don't provide asConst, it assumes, oh, it's just an array of strings that is mutable. It's an array of strings I can remove things from, add things to, shift around, etc. But with asConst, it says it's an array of these specific values in these specific indexes. It's useful when you want to assure that an array-like structure remains unchanged and immutable throughout your code. I don't want someone to come in here and add a new brand color with a brandcolors.push. If they reference brand color square bracket 0, index 0, it should be primary. It should be nothing else but primary. That's what the asConst assertion allows us to do. It provides stronger guarantees about what the values it contains are and prevents accidental modifications of these arrays, right? So if I write brand color 0 and mouse over it, it knows that value is primary. I cannot, for example, assign it to red. It'll tell me, TypeScript's like, you can't do that. It's a read-only property, right? Because it says, dude, brand colors is read-only, homie. You can't mutate it. You can't change it. That's going to be a problem. In the same way, I can't push extra onto it because it'll tell me, right? It doesn't exist because that's a read-only property. Now, that's not going to be something that happens in runtime. This is only during the compiling process of TypeScript. Only TypeScript is telling me this is a problem. But if I ran this code anyway in the browser, unfortunately, it would run because at the end of the day, TypeScript doesn't have an output in the browser or control in the browser. It's already compiled and out there, so keep that in mind. So that's what's cool about that, right? It makes it read-only to make sure that we can't accidentally modify it, and if I reference 0, it's primary, 1, it's secondary, 2, it's accent, no matter what. This will provide some incredible IntelliSense autocompletes down the line here, okay? What else? Yeah, so, okay, I have all these really cool constants right here. Where do I use them? Well, we're going to use them in our types file right here in the components folder as well. It will import those constants from the constants file I created. It defines the TypeScript types, aliases, based on the imported constants. So I'll talk about that in just a moment. It includes these type aliases for component colors, sizes, and background colors, and these type aliases ensure type safety when using them in your code. Okay? Yeah. All right, so that is to say that if I put these types anywhere, it will ensure that those are the only values I can put in. Anything else should result in an error. And they're all constants. They all have their index positions locked in. They are immutable arrays, unchanging, right? Can't modify them. Therefore, all these values, right? As you can see, type of BG colors number. So BG colors number, that'll be an array. Type of whatever BG colors numbers gets us, which is only these 4 possible colors. So anything typed with component BG colors only has those available options. So let's go back to the home page I was showing you and show you what I mean. In my button, if we go back to the button code, the button code has size and color. Color, component colors only. Primary, secondary, accent, info, success, warning, error, ghost. That's it. So right here, color primary. If I try and write primaries with an S, I get an error because that is not one of the type ofs that I allowed myself to write. That is the interconnected action of those constants being exported as const type assertions rather than as string arrays. And those types right here of type of component colors number, component colors, is how this type knows that if I provide anything other than primary, secondary, blah, 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 it should result in an error. This also is phenomenal when you're trying to do autocomplete values as well, or if I put in the set of quotation marks, it gives me autocomplete options of my actual values. The only reason it knows how to infer all that is the combination of this and this together coded on a components interface. And that is a really cool trick, not even trick, that's a really cool feature of TypeScript to really leverage, right? Autocompletes with IntelliSense to make sure that you prevent errors down the line and someone helping you collaborate on this project can't start typing in stupid colors that won't work. Yeah, buddy, that's what I'm talking about. Now, moving on. John Oliver segue there. Yeah, that about wraps it up for the components, the cool constants and types and how they interact together to really kick it up and to bam, kick it up a notch. That dates that gives away my age. I don't think y'all are gonna get that reference. If you did, get in the comments and let me know. In terms of views, let's take a look at looking at the list of notes. I adjusted something there, obviously. Not note details. I adjusted something everywhere. Notes. The overall logic is the same. It's going to fetch the list of notes, set into state, and then map through them. I have my container. Like I said, I can see this being extracted somewhere. Hey, I already described what grid columns are. So I have column 1s for mobile first, gap 4, bottom, add some distance on this div so there's some content space down below it. On medium and higher, go to 2. So this will be a 2x2 grid at any screen size, which, the notes can get pretty big, so I wanted to limit it. I don't want to make the notes super small. Now, here is my card. I can pass the key prop on there, no problem. And then from there, the laziness of not making a card body card title. So it displays the person's name on the note, which we're going to eventually get rid of when I start actually adding new features to this project here. That was a really weird, okay, type string. Paragraph, no body, no problem. Now here's something new I did. Notice I removed the .slice ... preview way of doing things I did in the previous video series. I've changed it with a new class name called Overflow Hidden. Right? Because Overflow Hidden allows me to say anything that goes outside of the height of 12, which I forget what it is. It's 3 rem or 48 pixels. Any text that would overflow that height, just cut it off. That is how my notes view doesn't have to do some kind of weird splicing or slicing action and guess a certain and how many characters I should display. I instead chose to set a maximum height and then say overflow of that height will be hidden. So I use some CSS trickery to give myself a preview of the note's body set by a height and overflow hidden combo. Very cool to know how to do. I made a link that goes to the notes button just like before. I made it my custom button component instead, so as you can see, view full note, etc. Same thing with the grid columns, and that's really all there is to comment about here. We can learn something new in this video. Like I said, I didn't want it to be just an overview of code and that's it. I can go down here and stop the process, and we're going to install a new package called Day.js that comes directly in with its own typings. Day.js is a date and time formatting library similar to Moment.js. As a matter of fact, Moment.js is saying go use Day.js because it's like the spiritual successor, and it's smaller and it's faster and it's very customizable. So I've been using Day.js, and it has native TypeScript support. I've been using it personally in all my recent projects when it comes to formatting, doing date or time math especially, right? High severity, I'll have to fix that at some point. Not now. Back to running. And boom. Okay, so what we're going to do now is import Day.js and use it. Okay, so I'm going to import. I like to, again, in terms of how I import things, I tend to keep libraries up top and then my custom stuff down below, which is why you see me organize it sometimes in weird ways. I believe it's a default export, so we'll do Day.js from Day.js, not Daisy UI. Day.js. Day.js. Yeah, that should be it for importing it. So we're good to go there. We can now take the created app property of my notes, since we know they have that, and actually style it to make it look nice somewhere. Let's make it like a subheading of that. So we're going to do an H3 with card subtitle. That is a Daisy UI class name. Then we have text SM, which is Tailwind, text gray 500. So we can make it a bit darker, right? Now, we're going to say render a call to Day.js. Day.js argument will be whatever we're trying to format. So we're going to be trying to format our note created at property, and it has a function called format that takes a string value. And you can always go look at the Day.js documentation to determine what you want. We can do like the name of the month, the day, and the year that we have generated this note. So let's go take a look at what that does for us. Old busted, new hotness. So now we have the day of the note where we read it. I was doing a lot of editing and deleting last night, which is why these two notes may not line up from what I had in the previous video. So please bear that in mind. Did a lot of editing, a lot of deleting, a lot of creating to make sure I didn't break any functionality as I styled the application here. But yeah, mobile responsive as well. No problem there. Yeah, so that's what I made here in my view cards. Let's see, what other views did we change? Login and register are definitely different. Look at this. This feels professional, doesn't it? Look at this. It feels like a real application over here. We got welcome back adventure. Log in to access your DnD notes with the automatically filled in inputs that I gave myself here. I have an error? Oh, always a favicon. Yeah, guess at test.com. Password's already filled in. I got the beautiful login button going on right here. And I added some color to this page as well. Have the classic at the bottom, small text here. Don't have an account yet. Start your journey by signing up. If we go head over to the login page and take a look at it here, like I said, logic-wise, nothing has changed, but I do have now my button container and input components. So all that logic, that juicy Tasty logic here is the exact same as it was before. I now have a container that I apply my normal class names to, py16 for some spacing in the vertical direction, and text center because there's not a lot of text on this page, so having it not be centered will look goofy. So I centered it right there. Welcome back adventure, just some classic Tailwind stuff on here. Again, maybe something I can extract around here. Some subtext, login to view DnD notes, all the juicy form class names we were messing with. Now I have my custom input components. Not too much changes, but again, we have some custom components we have written and can now import across our project for very quickly building out pages and not having to remember 10, 15, 20 different class names over and over and over again. Same thing with the password input, no changes there. The button logic is the same, except we have this awesome custom button component this time. That we can then utilize, which I super dig right here. So yeah, that's all that's really going on here. We have the same like error alert that we made before. Same thing for the location state if we have one. If we have one that exists, for example, and I added this paragraph down here at the bottom that's simply some small text that says don't have an account yet. Then, I don't know why that anchor is there. That should be a link. I do apologize. It was kind of late at night when I was doing this, so I probably autopiloted through this part here, which is such is life. There we go. Or I was copying someone's code that I liked. That's a possibility. Like if I find a site that I like, a lot of times I'll write down snippets of things I enjoy style-wise because I'm bad at it. So therefore, a lot of the times I'll always try and make sure that I take screenshots or copy HTML snippets and some CSS stuff of things that I think are aesthetically pleasing so I can copy it, which is probably where I got this from in the first place. But yeah, that's right there on that little link component down there. Yes, moving on to the next portion. What do we got going on here? We got register page. This one looking good in the neighborhood. Yeah, so we have a lovely register page here. Join the adventure. Register now. Start managing your DnD notes. It's the same register page as before, except with actual styling on it, as well as a proper link. There we go. A proper link that goes to the login page right there. Yeah, just a nice, flavorful register page. Something that's a bit nicer than we had before. Not a whole lot to mention there in terms of differences. Yeah. Use my button container input components, same logic for handling the click logic, and the same displaying of error messages and whatnot. Just with the additional flavor text down here. I've already logged in or already have an account, then go log in here. So that's just a good UX, UI choice we always have to make when making login register pages. Nothing really new happened there. Let's see. What about adding a new note page? That's just going to be kind of like a design extension of my login and register views here. So if I go to my add note page, jot down a new note. Remember, an important event or character detail for your campaign. I made a very large text area for us to be able to write a large, possibly markdown, and then jot that down to add the new note as we need it here. I don't think I did anything super fancy on that particular page on add a note, right? I have the same logic as always. Except I have my button container text area, and I put a toast element here, so I don't want like a big fat error appearing. Unlike the login register components, I want like an alert bar appearing on those indicating that something's gone wrong, because they're pretty big steps in the process of this whole project, which is logging in or registering an account. I don't want some temporary error message to appear. My user looks away and then it disappears and they're wondering why they didn't get logged in. I want those to persist. But when adding a new note and something goes wrong, I don't want to navigate the page, lose their state or something like that. I want some kind of toast to appear saying something went wrong instead, right? That's why down here we import and use my toast finally by saying toast error with the error message. So it'll appear in the bottom right corner and time down so they know something went wrong and they need to try again, for example. So I think that's a cool UI UX decision we're going to make there. But other than that, nothing changed in terms of my use form hook and my handle submit code. Just some additional flavor for my page here and some color to it as well. My text area in beautiful display where it knows that the rows is a number value. I didn't code that, remember? That came from the interface I added to TypeScript right here, omitting size and color. But it knows that rows is a thing because of that extends right there. Other than that, not a whole lot different here. Yes. This here, I have resize-y. That is a class name from Tailwind that allows us to only resize it in the vertical direction, which would make sense for taking long-form notes in a campaign, whereas we don't want to really, we want it to be nice and long-wise, and we don't want it to be draggable in the X horizontal direction, because that would ruin the layout and spacing of the page. That's a cool trick to know how to do in order to not break your page layouts by having someone do something kind of stupid. From there, edit note. Yeah, nothing really new on edit note either. If we head over to that page, let's go edit a note here and take a look at it. Oh, update note. Is it always written that way? We'll see. Let's go edit a note and see what that looks like. Notes, beautiful note. We'll talk about this in a second. Edit note. Update your note, right? So again, it's a replication of my add note page, except I added some flavor text here, edit existing note for your campaign, filled in the text here, same thing with the text area, change it up button to save the changes, or a go back button to go back to where they were. Nothing really of note there. The toast error message is in my catch now rather than just console logging it. It's a much better way of handling errors gracefully. Same thing. If there's an error, catch it with the toast and display it that way. Container class as always. New text area components, flavor text h1 and paragraph. This link goes back to the note ID, and this button is my custom button component that makes it look fancy. And that's all. I made it a ghost button because I wanted the save button to have more pop than the other one. So the go back button is a ghost button, so it's not like immediately grabbing your attention first, because it shouldn't be. Speaking of note details, we need to confirm to fix this created at value right here, so we can do a quick day.js modification on it. I'm going to go grab that from my notes page out of laziness. So let's go grab this one. Head to note details. Let's import and use. Nope. It was a default. There we go. Hey, nice autocomplete. And then down yonder, all we got to do is take the... Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. I'm blind. Pass it in there, and it's details.createdAt. There we go. That'll automatically punch up and make this look much nicer. There we go. So yeah, there's our note details with a nicely formatted day.js date. And we have our fun flavor text for our DnD ipsum right here. As you can see, I made 3 ghost buttons because I don't want them to be... The point here is to stare at the note and not these buttons. But edit note, and as you can see, I started utilizing having icons in my button component here. So I have React icons, specifically the game icons directory, where I have a couple return arrow for going back, quill ink for editing, and trash can for deleting. But other than that, the logic is the same, minus toast errors being fired if an error happens to occur in the getting or the deleting of this process, right? So yeah, display those details, format the day correctly, a bit nicer text for the note itself, but the same logic of splitting it up into paragraphs if they happen to exist there. And then all these lovely little links to go to certain things, except for my button right here. So yeah, nothing too crazy happening here on note details either. And I had some decisions between putting the buttons on top or on bottom. This would be like a discussion to be had. But again, like UI UX stuff tends to have things you should do, and then a lot of other things that might be subjective or discussion worthy, right? So placing the buttons at the top can make them immediately accessible, but I was afraid that people on mobile with fat thumbs might click the buttons accidentally and delete a note really quickly, for example, or go to edit a note and like, oh crap, I didn't mean to do that. So I chose to put them on the bottom, so I'd have to force my user to scroll down through even a long note in order to edit it or delete it, because that kind of makes sense to me. But again, it's about taking these into consideration. So like I kind of moved it up and down on both desktop and on mobile and decided how they look. Also, I had the buttons stacked vertical on mobile because it's always a good thing to do. So it's like, kind of play around with stuff when it comes to UI UX like that. So if you have a better answer, please get in the comments and let me know. But again, I think having them on the bottom, even if the note is super long, is better, especially for mobile users trying to read a note and not accidentally clicking a button first. So yeah, that was some consideration stuff I had from there. Now, speaking of deleting things, we're going to cover that in the next video because this has already been 44 minutes long. In the next video, we're going to start adding a new feature and changing some of our server-side requests here. And we're also going to be adding a modal to this code base. So stay tuned for that because right now this will just directly delete a note, and that's probably not something we want to have happen. So we're actually going to learn how to build a modal from scratch. and learn about some cool stuff. But I realize now that'll take me like another 30-ish minutes at least to discuss a couple concepts behind it and how modals work with React, because guess what? A modal cannot be rendered as a child of our root, especially for accessibility reasons. It has to be rendered outside of the root div. And you're like, wait, you can render things outside of the root div? Why would you do that? Well, you're going to learn about that in the next video coming out tomorrow. So see y'all then. And as always, thanks for listening through this free online YouTube course for building a full stack CRUD app. MERN CRUD app, all the buzzwords. If you enjoy it and if you want some direction moving forward here after a couple features I've added, get in the comments down below. Sub to our channel. I have an awesome algorithm and data structure series I've been working on, as well as a bunch of other random videos that I make. So make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff, and sub to our channel. So thank you guys for watching. See you on the next video.